Hey folks, this is WP Roundtable, episode 157. My name is Kyle. I'm coming to you from Jackson, Michigan. I work for a company called Sandhills Development right now. We build easy digital downloads, Affiliate WP, and Restrict Content Pro, a lot of other sweet stuff from the best teams on the planet. I love it. I love my job. And this Monday has been pretty fun, but it just gets even better because I'm ending my day by getting to chat with one of my good friends, Amit Rathi. How you doing today, buddy?
Not too bad. How about you?
Pretty great, man. Totally excited about our conversation. Amit is a good pal that I've been getting to know at some local events. You are somewhat local here. You're based in the Detroit area, that's right?
Yep, I actually live in Detroit still.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, Detroit has got quite the up-and-coming scene and a new sort of like reinvigorated WordPress community, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to see for WordCamp Detroit. It's going to be great.
Yeah, after like a 5-year hiatus, it's back on track with like a vibrant community. Everybody's like coming together and things are happening. I couldn't be more excited about it.
Exactly.
Well, let's jump into our quick picks of the week before we learn all about you, Amit. My quick pick is I made a cool playlist on Spotify and I'm really digging it. So search for me on Spotify, Kyle Maurer, and I made a female singers playlist, which I've been working on for a little while over the course of a few weeks. And I'm just digging it. You know, it's just got me in the right groove every day. There's some good stuff on there. So yeah, check that out. That's my quick pick.
I'm always looking for music. To be honest, I am not one to discover music on my own, so that sounds great. I usually add a bunch of my friends and just listen to their playlists because
perfect.
I don't have the time to make my own.
Yeah, it can be pretty intense to just like brown. And then I don't know. It's like it's a hard thing to do like while I'm working. Like put on just another random channel, and it's just background at that point.
Like for me, I just need something to just press shuffle and then just kind of go with it.
Yeah, so. I'm with you, man. You got a good quick pick for us today?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I discovered it a little while ago. Local by Flywheel.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like their MAMP kind of development environment. I discovered it actually at WordCamp Ann Arbor. Someone told me about it, and so I was like, all right, I'll try it out. And I'm actually pretty intrigued and slowly making it part of my workflow. Like there's a few things I'm still learning about it that don't really go with what I used to do with MAMP and like version control and things like that. But I think they're going to get there, and I'm pretty excited to see. It honestly makes workflow with WordPress pretty easy. Yeah,
I've been a big fan actually, and using it since they acquired the product. I don't know, a year and a half or two ago.
Yeah,
it's a cool tool.
Yeah, so I've actually shifted like 3 of my client work projects to Flywheel just because of how interested I am with it. It was tough leaving WP Engine. It's tough. I mean, the cost is great because it's like literally half the cost for some of these sites, but WP Engine is definitely like difficult to leave because I know the team so well.
Yeah, sure. Did you read the latest Review Signal hosting review?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did. Those are always really good. I think we talked about it last week in with my guest Scott. I think that's what we talked about. But Review Signal is one of the. I mean, everybody reviews. There's so many hosting review sites and blogs and stuff like that. And it's mostly trash, but that one is really solid, and I look forward to it every year.
Right. No, I mean, I spend a lot of time, like, even when I take on, like, the smallest project, just to figure out what are the hosting requirements and put them on a good, like, you know, a better platform. And so I like these managed WordPress environments a lot better than, like, trying to set up on something else. And so at Amber, we use WP Engine, and so that's how I got introduced to it. And I had to spend a lot of time talking to the live chat, which is how I got to learn their team. And then I actually met their team at WordCamp US. And so once you put the people to the technology, it becomes a lot easier to trust the platform. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just admiring their like a newly redesigned website today. WP Engine has got kind of like a slick new look.
Yeah, I like it. I was actually just on it just earlier today.
Yeah, so I'm into it. I am, and I mean, I show they just got a massive infusion of cash. Weeks ago.
So ideally, if they could just acquire Flywheel, so that I don't feel like I left them, that would be that would be the great like win-all solution.
How about that? Yeah, I wonder if we get to a point before too long, whether some of those are consolidating, eating up the smaller ones. But yeah, it's an interesting space right now. Right now, it's more likely that large established hosting providers are snapping up the little managed WordPress companies, like we've seen happen several times already.
Yep. Didn't what is it? Liquid Web just get acquired by someone? I might be butchering this completely. Someone else just got acquired. I just read it.
iThemes was acquired.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, right. That's what it was. Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Which is huge because I used a lot of iTheme plugins back in the day when I was just getting started. So that's kind of huge for them.
Yeah. This is like a wild time where the space is maturing so much, and you and I can remember a time where, I mean, WordPress was kind of like this narrow little niche, just kind of taking off and starting to establish its own economy, and now it's like very much being taken notice of by like the broader economy, and well-established hosting companies are investing heavily into WordPress, and investors are considering WordPress a totally viable investment at this point. This is all like kind of new and says a lot about the economy we're in. It's not something that people on other alternative platforms to WordPress are experiencing.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Anyway, fun conversation, but what we really are here for is we got to learn all about this guy, you, Amit.
Okay.
All right. So I want to learn a little bit about your background first. We'll set the stage here. I don't know everything about everywhere you've been, and every pet dog you've ever had, and every bicycle you've ever ridden, and every class you ever took, and every book you ever read. I don't know any, pretty much all of that stuff. So let's go back in time just a little to when a young Amit was peering into his crystal ball and trying to figure out his future and making a decision about what he wanted to do with his life. Tell us about what that decision was and how'd you get on that path?
Okay. Well, if we start, like, even when I was 12, that's when my family had internet, and actual internet, none of that dial-up. Actually, what was it called? We got some AT&T crap. I don't even remember, but it was great.
Did you grow up in Detroit?
No, I didn't. So my family moved a lot.
Okay.
So I was born in Pakistan. I was 18 months old when we moved. My family lived in England, then Canada, and then Detroit. I would say from 12 years old on, I've been in Detroit or Michigan bound, but before then, just a bunch of traveling.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I remember when we first got AOL, and I have 3 older siblings, so I always had to fight to get to the computer. And I remember we had AOL, and we had to dial up to connect or whatever. But then if you had make a phone call, right, I had to log off. And of course, like, my siblings would use the internet for whatever they had to do, and like they would let me get on. I get about 10 minutes before my parents are like, "Oh no, we have to make a phone call." So like they definitely managed that time so that I got the least amount of time possible. But so like I got exposed to internet at a young age, and at the time I didn't really think too much about it. Then later down the line, we got whatever the actual internet is that wasn't dial-up. I guess I guess it was Wi-Fi. I honestly don't know. It's And I don't even know what it's called. I just remember we didn't have to use dial-up, so that was cool.
Right.
And through that, I discovered the real web, like Neopets, for example. Just discovered torrenting. Discovered.
Wow.
I remember figuring out that I could download like a Game Boy emulator to play Pokemon.
Oh,
And
neat.
yeah, dude, it was the coolest thing ever. I got to play Pokemon Red and Blue. I got Yellow, and then I was like, "This is so cool. Why would I get the game?" Until I realized, oh well, when I leave my computer, I can't actually play it, and and then I was like, I got a Game Boy Advance, and I was like, okay, I guess the physical copy is great, but I got,
Yeah.
so the internet, I got exposed to it, and from there, like, I was able to find groups, communities. Again, like Neopets was cool at the time. It still is. I think their site's still active. I haven't actually checked, but a lot of these websites were coming out, and so much more content was available at such an just on the web, right? You just punch in a couple domains, and that's it. So for me, technology has always been an interest, and for as long as I could remember, according to my live journal from like when I was 12 or 13 years old, I actually always wanted to be an engineer. That was the plan. I wanted to make something. I was always creative. I always wanted to do something with my hands. So
You're citing your source here. That's
I'm
great.
citing my source because it's still live. I'm not going to give you that URL, but I can one day when I reveal those memoirs, I guess I could reference to that, and it's like, yeah, I remember writing about this, and it's like, yeah, not much has changed in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I've still focused on the same thing and all the way through. So I never really had anything like any other thoughts. I always wanted to be an engineer, right? I wanted to solve problems and build things. And that's kind of how college went. Like I pursued electrical and computer engineering at Wayne State, and from that point on, like I did about 4 or 5 years into schooling, and during college, I actually got a couple of research opportunities that really exposed me to the software world. Because prior to college, I didn't take computer science or any programming classes at all. I actually took a bunch of like languages. I took Spanish and Japanese in high school, and so I think I got up to like Spanish 3 and like Japanese 4. So I was always interested in languages, but never took computer science, even though I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't really think software was going to be my path. And then, my first programming class, I was like, yeah, programming is definitely not for me. Definitely cannot do this. I struggled with a lot of things, and I definitely was lucky to have the classmates that would share me their work. And I remember many labs where I would just change a couple variables around, move a couple code snippets around, and add a couple comments to make it look like I wrote this. But if you had asked me, I was like, nope, don't even know what's going on. I just know when I run it, it works. And wow. That's all I settled for. But I got my first research position as a freshman, and all I simply did was I kind of just walked around the College of Engineering's department, the electrical department, and I just walked around looking at each like professor's doors to see what they're doing. And I saw one that like it was like a robotics lab. So I was like, I'm just gonna walk in and say like I don't have any hands-on experience, so I don't really know if electrical computer engineering is for me. Maybe mechanical's my thing. Maybe engineering's not my stuff. Like I just don't have any experience, right? So I walked in. I just kind of like knocked. Here I am, like this like green freshman, just no idea what to say. But I just told him, I was like, look, I'm just looking for some hands-on experience to figure out exactly what kind of engineering discipline I should choose. And so I was invited to volunteer at their lab. And a few months go by, and this lab, they worked on medical and military equipment. Like it was some heavy duty stuff. Like the the project I got to volunteer on, which then later got a grant for, was working on training surgeons using robotic, like using virtual simulators and like hands-on stuff. So it like was like an Xbox controller, and they were practicing how to do surgery, like operations, which is currently what they do now, right? Like they use remote technology to control arms and things like that, and they're literally just like a needle prick into people's bodies, and they're sending like robots and all that kind of stuff in there. That's so yeah. Like as a freshman, when you have like didn't realize, oh, software, hardware, robots, like whole thing, like it was like mind-blowing experience when I got to see it, because I got to watch one of the demos that they did on like a dead pig, which was pretty interesting. So that's kind of like what exposed me to it. So I was like, okay, I realize I'm not good at it, but definitely interested in, like, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be building the robots, right? I want to be on the forefront of that. And so after that grant, I like continued to pursue more programming based classes, and still struggled, but still was lucky to find some good friends to help out and that. And I was in a circuits class where I was talking to my TA and told him I was interested in building an app for my sales job at the time, where I saw they had some inventory issues, and it was really just because they didn't have the right software. They didn't have the right tooling. And I was like, at that time, like the iPhone was huge, the smartphones were getting there. So I was like, it would be cool if we could just have a phone that could just scan these barcodes and connect to some server where like all that info just in real time. So kind of let's go back to that job, because it was a sales job. It was wholesale granite, basically granite slabs for countertops. And so these are huge things, right? These are huge things that are coming from a truck, and we're storing over the place, and they're constantly being moved because people want to pick out the correct slab that goes on their countertop. And so I had the responsibility of doing a little bit of sales and a little bit of inventory management. And so the issue was the inventory kept moving around, and I would tag a slab for one customer and then couldn't find it later, because by the time I put it in the system and by the time it got updated, someone else had already sold it, because there was no communication. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I pitched to the boss at the time, and he didn't really understand. And I also, because I probably didn't really understand, I was like, there's got to be some way to connect the things. Like, there's got to be a better way for a salesperson to figure out what inventory is available, what they should show the customers, and that process. And so that's when I started learning about Android app development, and started like in my free time during that job, I would just be on developers.android.com, just like trying to learn this stuff. And I was like, okay, this is over my head, because this is when Android was just getting popular, and like smartphone development became popular. No one really knew what an app was until now. But at that time, like, it was hard for me to even understand what it was. But through one of my labs, I actually got invited into another research lab where they were all about cloud computing and mobile technologies. And so the project I got to work on was using an Android device to connect to some Arduino with a Bluetooth on it, and you would pass it it had like a motion detector on it, like a 4-meter motion detector. And so on the app, there would be controls to move the motor one way, clockwise or counterclockwise. And so we had to build that so that from the phone connected to the Bluetooth, moving the motor on the Arduino, but then also it would send all that information to like a Google Cloud or whatever, so that there was data being logged. So it was like this cross-platform cloud thing, and at the time it was like Google's App Engine, I think it was called. So it was like none of that stuff I understood. right? Like here I am, like I just finished like a C++ class, and I don't even remember what I did for the final because you can't ask me. I just Googled a bunch of stuff and just hoped it worked, and it probably worked like 90% of the time, and I would take I'd take what I could get out of it, but so I was introduced to it. I was exposed to all that stuff. It's just I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, and when I'd ask the professor for help or anyone for help, the response that they would give me is Google it. So I had to learn very, very early that if I wanted to learn any of this stuff, I'm going to have to Google it for myself. So then, discover this interesting thing called YouTube and realize if I type like how to build a navigation bar in Android, there's a chance that I'm going to find someone that literally did a live coding video on it. And that's pretty much what I would do. I would watch them I would be watching them code, do exactly what they're doing, find out that their video was like probably 2 years old. And so I have to go debug all the stuff that got changed. And so a 12-minute video became 3-4 hours long just because like the stuff that they wrote just was outdated. And through that, I learned the debugging process and learned how to how to read other people's code, how to read other people's fixes, test it, see if it actually worked, and then go back to the drawing board if it didn't. And so that's how I kind of picked up Android development. Like I wasn't proficient, but I was to a point where I understood it. And then from that, I was like, well, this was just one place that I thought about the app, which I never ended up building for them, but it would have been a cool project. So then I had that hunger for like, okay, well, what else could I do with this information I have that impacts some other industry or some other, business. And so that's how, that's kind of how I got a research, I kind of got a research grant again, where I got to study abroad to China.
Whoa.
from that same research lab, they just had they got a grant because I guess Obama approved some bill that would say we were going to send 100,000 students to China, and they were going to send 100,000 students to the U.S. for learning. So it was some crazy scholarship thing that Wayne State got approved for. And so I was one of the lucky students that applied, but because I worked at the research lab, they're like, yeah, we need more students to go. So I was like, okay, paid trip to China? Sure. So all of this happened in a span of 4 or 5 years, right? So here I am, I got such a good exposure to big data and mobile development and actually implementing it into some real world problems that that desire to want to take this knowledge and possibly solve it for whoever I could, right? If someone came to me with an app idea, I wanted to become the developer to build it. I had all these ideas, but I really lacked the expertise to build it. And I was tired of having these good ideas, but couldn't build anything. And so, I was just like, screw it, I'm going to learn. And so I kind of didn't finish school. There was a semester where I had a choice: learn web development or study for a midterm that I'm pretty confident I was going to bomb anyways, because I wasn't going to class, because I was more motivated to learn more web development, Android development, and just zero motivation to go to the class. And that's all I had to do. The class was some linear algebra, and that's all I had to do at the time. I had zero motivation to do the homework. But when if you had asked me to learn some more HTML or JavaScript, I would be all hands on deck. So I took some time off to figure out web development, app development, whatever it was that I wanted to freelance as. But I definitely knew I wanted to be a freelancer. And so I was initially thinking just Android development, but I wanted to be cross-platform, cross devices, the whole thing, and that's how web caught my attention. Someone recommended learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because there's this cool tool called PhoneGap, and you could turn anything that built from mobile web into an actual mobile app for Android, iOS, or whatever platform. That was super cool. But then I had to learn 3 more languages. I was already like invested in learning Android and like getting better at that. But then I'm like, well, do I just start over again and learn this web stuff, or do I stay Android and just stay committed? But against my stubbornness, I was like, no, if I can hit more devices by learning web, I'm going to learn web. And I mean, I had some experience with HTML because of MySpace. Good old setting up your profiles and things like that. So
of course.
So you know, like it all kind of connected. And I think the biggest chip on my shoulder is like, yeah, I stopped. I kind of dropped out of college at like a very, very weird time because I only had like about a year left. It's just I honestly had zero desire to sit in those classes when I knew there's so much more going on. And it's because of the experience I had from research and China, like seeing the stuff that we got to work on over there. I'm like, yeah, I can't sit in class and like learn about like derivatives. That just sounds so boring. So you know, like it's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because of course my parents are coming from like a conservative background and like they, you know, gotta get a degree. It doesn't matter what it is, just gotta get a degree. And I was like, yeah, I get all that, but I had zero motivation to pursue it. And you know, I was getting some opportunities for web development. So I was like, well, you know, I'm kind of proving that this is actually a thing. So you know, I kind of just went with it. So let's fast forward a few months. I get a WordPress gig because enough of my friends knew that this is what I was trying to do. And I remember getting a text that, hey, my boss is looking to update their website. And the first person they thought it was me. And that's how I got like my first like few projects. And the guy is like, hey, yeah, we have a site. It's in WordPress. And I was like, oh, wait, isn't that a blogging tool? Because I only knew about WordPress.com. I had no idea there was a WordPress.org. I had no idea there was this whole community, this whole open sourceness that was out there. So, you know, I had to learn WordPress. He had like a Genesis framework theme that he bought. He had Gravity forms and none of that stuff. No idea that what I was doing. But I took that project on because I'm like, I need something. And WordPress sounds like this is the platform. I had no idea how their market share. I had no idea that like so many websites were powered with WordPress, and I didn't realize there was a big community. But you know, I sort of went with it, spending night and day just learning, watching tutorials like how do you build a custom theme. All I want to do was change the footer. I wanted to get rid of the Powered by WordPress off of the footer, and it's like that. Just figuring out how to do that was just like a hurdle in itself because like I didn't know PHP. I had to learn like FTP, like, you know, download the files from the server and actually like edit it and then push it up. And then like, you know, like even then I started learning version control and, you know, so many things you have to learn with web development that it's not just the code. The coding then became like the easiest part. I was like, well, oh yeah. So I made this change. How the hell do I get it up to the actual server? And, you know, I had to go Google that. And like so many people had different ways to do that. It's like, well, how do you pick what flow to go? So, you know, that project went well. I was able to deliver what the client needed at the time. And then from there, I got more referral gigs and I was slowly learning WordPress customization. And at that same time, I was paying for a co-working space out in Troy, Michigan. And there was 2 developers that were freelancing there. One was working remotely. The other was a freelancer. And they were WordPress developers. So they kind of gave me a rundown. Like I got a new MacBook. And so I had no idea how to set it up. I was a big PC guy, but I read a lot about MacBook being a preferred developer laptop. Caved. I'm still anti-iOS. Will always be anti-iOS. We're not even going to deal with that. But I kind of conform to the dark side. I do like my MacBook. But I had one of the developers show me all these shortcuts of like such good, like just navigation with it and how to set up my development environment. And so that's how I got introduced to MAMP, get better workflow with WordPress. And then I was able to just hit the ground running for a couple of months. And then I get a email from Anthony from Amber Detroit saying that one of my friends recommended me to him because they were looking for exactly what I was getting into. Like they were looking for a WordPress developer, they were looking for someone front end, someone who was interested in like the PhoneGap Cordova thing. So like all the stuff that they were looking for is pretty much stuff that like for about a year and a half I spent learning. So, you know, it was tough because I spent all this time trying to build my own business, trying to build my own freelancing thing. And I was like, well, do I really want to work for somebody? But then after like looking at their portfolio, I'm like, yeah, I think I can learn a few things from them at least. So, you know, it was a no-brainer, work for them. So I just left them out back in like November, end of October, just to pursue different things. But during those 2 years, you know, I thoroughly had to learn not just WordPress, some heavy CSS, some heavy JavaScript, heavy PHP, heavy SQL. I've had to write more complex web apps that I personally didn't think I really signed up for. I was like, I'm just going to build marketing sites. But no, we built like some hardcore custom web apps. Like we built like a social media site for a client, you know, using like WordPress at its core. But under the hood, I had to write such advanced queries that like I literally had to write SQL queries myself because WordPress default could not handle it, or it had to be like customized. And so like when I mean like I got under the hood of WordPress, I literally was forced to get under the hood, and because of that, like, you know, there's still a lot I don't know, but there's a lot I had to learn in the last 2 years that like still to this day I'm confident that I can do a lot of cool things with just the platform alone. And so I was pursuing that, but after a couple of WordCamps, you know, the hunger for running my own show, running my own projects, and also I wanted to focus more on mobile again because off of the recent project that I've just been working on for my friend, and like she has a band called Science for Sociopaths, and so she contacted me because when she had a bunch of fans, she was ready to get a website, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of my space. I can help you out. And after the last few years of struggling, trying to learn everything that I can and do a good job, and then it's the biggest thing is like learning stuff in development, but then realizing how are you going to get that in production? Because you can't, some of the stuff that you do in development, you should not put on production. And I had to learn that the hard way. And, you know, so like, there are so many questions, but, you know, with this project, all those things I have experience with. So I've been excited about this project. It's taken a little bit longer because I've had to do it on the freelance side hustle. I took a contract gig right after I put in my 2 weeks with Amber, just to kind of get some passive, not passive, some active income so that I could support this side hustle a little bit more. So it's a contract to hire, and I'm doing heavy front end development for them. And on the side, like I've been working on this project for probably the last like 6 months or so, just building, like her sister did some designs. I built the front end, integrated with WordPress, and now getting to a point where I'm helping them market. And the biggest reward out of this is like all this tech stack was me. Like I made the decisions of what technology I had to use, and I kind of just was able to use what I've learned in the last, you know, several years and build a custom theme, like not only a custom theme, but using modern JavaScript stuff, using modern CSS stuff, and truly like upgrade like my front end stack from this project. So it's been kind of like a guinea pig project for the last like It's a couple months now too. So I'm really excited about it, and this has turned into constant more leads. So we'll see what happens. Like I definitely want to continue growing out this MobiDev to not just do marketing sites, not just do web apps, but like mobile, like from like doing Amazon skills or like the Google Home skills or smart watches, wearables, you name it. I kind of want to be on the forefronts of that technology.
Gotcha. Well,
I know that was a big long spiel of like the whole process, but all of it is kind of important to like what brought me here.
Yeah. Yeah, lots going on there. So now you're running your business, which is called the MobiDev.
Yeah. So short for like the mobile development or the mobile developer. Still not sure which one I'm decided on. Originally it was me, right? So I was like the mobile developer. That's really what I wanted to be doing. And so that short like word kind of got put together. But now I've kind of focused on considering it, calling it, like referring it to it as the mobile development, where it's something I'm building, but like on the go. So it's like a play on word of mobile devices and also mobile being like mobility, like on the go. So like those are like two things, like, but and it kind of goes hand in hand because that's what most of these apps are. They're all about focus on accessibility. So their whole goal is about being able to sell you their product from like the tip of your fingers. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's to that, it's kind of a play on words for that.
It reminds me a little, it's cool, but it reminds me a little of like a bunch of years ago, I was starting to get into web stuff and newly starting my own business. And I went to some business seminar for other new business owners. And somebody said, I'm doing mobile advertising. And I was like, oh, that sounds, kind of related to the internet marketing, web dev stuff that I'm doing too. We should talk and learn a little bit about what you're doing with mobile apps and whatever else. And he was like, no, not that kind of mobile advertising.
Oh.
It was like those trucks that drive around cities with the signs in the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
That just drive around all day just so you see the sign.
That's mobile.
Yeah,
mobile. That is as mobile as it kind of gets.
It never crossed my mind for a second. But yeah, that's how the word, like the word came together, and like that's kind of where I just ran with it, and we filed an LLC for it, and I'm still figuring out what I can provide, but I mean, in terms of the three things I want to be doing, it's consulting work, because I'm really good with people, understanding their idea, and sometimes they're way too early to even get into the development phase. They're still figuring out the branding and the vision. So I like to help them get that piece moving before I even write any code, because also I like to save myself some time. I've learned the process the hard way of like, oh yeah, I'll just quickly write you up a page. And then they're like, oh yeah, can you change this? Can you change this? And like, I remember getting feedback like, can you make the font smaller or bigger? And it's like, that's such a abstract concept. Like, do you want it 18 pixels? Do you want it, you know what I mean? Like, there's like no numeric value to it, like bigger or small. It's like, and then I would tweak it and then say, oh yeah, can you make it bigger this time? So it's like, so many times of like changing code that it's like, I have a process now where like I want to consult with them, figure out what their idea is, figure out what their long-term vision is, budget, time frame, the whole shebang, and then figure out are there designs, because I am no longer just writing HTML just for fun and then having to restyle it because they're like, oh can you move all this stuff around? So I want my blueprint, which is the design aspect. I'm not a designer, so I usually work with a bunch of designers, or I actually send them to like Theme Forest, where I send them to the HTML themes, because the problem with the WordPress themes is what you see is not what you get.
unless you set it up that way, right? Like the demo looks so great. You buy the theme, you activate it, and you're like, where are these images? Where is everything? And what people don't realize is you actually have to do a little bit of setup for it. And it's not that I wouldn't like. It's not that I'm against working with a pre-bought theme. As long as they have good documentation, I'll figure it out. But the problem is sometimes you don't know what coding standards they use, and so you don't know what kind of vulnerabilities you have to deal with. So instead, I prefer them to buy the HTML, where like that's exactly what they want, and out of it, I just get HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then I can just filter through it and say, okay, we're not using this library, we're not using this library, and like I can gut the code out, and then I convert it into a WordPress theme with PHP.
Sure. Yeah, that seems practical.
So that's actually how I tailor towards like low budget projects where like, yeah, they don't have the budget for a designer, and you know, the designers I deal with are actually very good and they deserve what they charge. But most people don't see that, and most of the clientele I'm dealing with are these mom and pop shops where they still don't understand why a website costs more than $50. And while I want to be able to educate them, and you know, some of them do understand, but because it's not a tangible thing, they don't see it as the same thing as like walking out with like a slab of granite. A slab of granite could be anywhere from like $800 to whatever, and like they understand that value. But like a website, they can't understand that. Oh, it's gonna cost a decent chunk of change for a decent website or mobile app. So like, you know, I've been playing around with different ways to like cater to those types of people, because I don't want to. I've learned to say no to projects, but I hate saying no because part of me wants to help people, right? It's like these guys have good ideas, they have good passion for it. It's just they need help executing on it. But the problem is, one, they aren't willing to spend the money. Maybe they don't have the capital, and maybe it is a good idea that really does just need some extra support. So to cater to them in different ways, I've came up with like, okay, well, if they don't have the budget, I'm not writing custom code. I'm not writing any custom CSS or custom JavaScript or any custom like PHP. If they don't have the budget for it, then I'm just going to work with plugins and, you know, that kind of stuff. So that way, like, it really is, you get what you pay for in that regard. Like if you want a fully tailored theme or plugin or product, then it's much higher end, because I'm going to be writing this stuff from scratch, or, you know, using a lot better practices and not using like bloated libraries, because they'll just add size to the project for no reason, right? Performance is big for me, so I like to optimize that as much as possible. But that's why I will charge a high premium for things like that. Whereas if it's just a matter of like a marketing site for like my friend who's a DJ, or again for the band Science for Sociopaths, I pretty much got them on an HTML theme, and then I just kind of converted it, because for them, they just need something up there so that they can get their audience base, you know, just converting into subscribers, followers, whatever it is. So we had to work quickly. We couldn't take too long to, like, this wasn't something that we didn't want to launch something in like a year. We want to be able to launch something now and slowly add onto it as we go, which is what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. I'm planning version 2 as we're going. The version 1's already out there. So.
Sure. Yeah. Working on some pretty cool stuff right now, Amit, and it sounds like you've got some cool plans for the future. You've been invested a lot more lately in the community, and doing a little more. I mean, you've been doing WordPress stuff for quite a while, you know, only recently.
Yeah.
I think you've been pretty involved in the space, the industry, and I'm coming out to see people IRL. So what's your future involvement going to be looking like? I mean, and also like with your mobile stuff, are there like other communities that you get involved in that I don't know about?
So that's actually an interesting topic because WordCamp US was a very eye-opening experience for me. Well, one, Nashville is awesome. That was a fantastic time, just in general.
Sure. Yeah.
But so my interest in mobile, how that all came apart was for the site Science for Sociopaths. Like my client, she did not have a laptop at the time, so she was managing her site from her phone. And the WordPress mobile app, if you're using Automatic, the WordPress.com, the experience is great. The code editor, that's great. But the WP admin still takes you to the browser, and that mobile experience is awful. So awful. I was watching her actually add a post because I wanted her to do it so I could see what the pain points were, and I cringed each time. It's just so many things were all over the place. The animations were bad. It's a bad experience. The WP admin experience for .org users is bad. And so instead of the WordCamp US in Philly the year before, I actually joined the core team to contribute on the contributor day. Mm-hmm. This year, I actually joined the mobile team because I wanted to rant about it, tell them that this needs to get updated, and figure out what do I need to do to get involved. And they were happy because not many people actually join the mobile team for contributing. Most people are just core or designers or UX, right? That's normally the audience that they get. Most people aren't Android or iOS developers, and so they don't have a strong contributor. They still have a strong mobile team, but not heavily. And so I'm really interested in getting involved with the WordPress mobile and updating how WP admin is. To the point where even for my own personal clients, I'm ripping out WP admin and turning it into its own progressive web app so that I have full control over it and I can update the UI heavily, which is why I'm getting into the JavaScript space so much more than the PHP side. I'm glad that I know PHP and I'm glad I know it well. I probably have a lot more to learn about it, but sort of abandoning that to go full JavaScript, the whole Node.js world, the React world, that whole thing. And, I think that's where WordPress is moving also. They realize that JavaScript is not going anywhere soon, and I don't think it will go anywhere at all. And, that's where Gutenberg is coming in place and all that fun stuff that they're doing. So yeah, I'm trying to get involved in the mobile team and also just update the WordPress mobile app so that even for the .org sites that I use, that the clients can actually manage their website reasonably well. I know managing a site on the mobile device is still going to be difficult. There's a few things that are just easier on a desktop or on a laptop. However, I think we really do need to update its experience from a mobile, just because some people are for a musician, she didn't need a laptop. She still really doesn't. She ended up buying one, but she's still on her phone. So she should be able to manage her site the same way a .com user should. And so I've actually been on the Slack team. I've been following the trends for that, and I've shared them with what I want to do when they're really interested in showing me how I can actually make these updates to the actual core of the mobile platforms.
That sounds like such a cool way to get involved.
It's exciting because I actually ran into an Android developer at a meetup, and he's trying to become an Android developer, and I was like, yeah, have you contributed to any open source projects? He said no, and I said I told him what I was doing, and he said yeah, he'd love to do that. He still wants to stay an Android developer, but this is just another Android app for him. And I kind of explained, I kind of showed him some of the wireframes I want to take from WP admin and revamp them, because WP admin needs a lot of love, whole lot of love. I know the editor's great, the Gutenberg is looking pretty cool, but the whole WP admin needs a revamp.
Right.
So
yeah,
so
it's about time.
yeah, so that's kind of like the push I'm trying to make. That's kind of the talks I'm trying to get submit in the upcoming WordCamps, and I'm still staying in the WordCamp community, but kind of going from a different angle than instead of just being a strong PHP developer, and instead going mobile and JavaScript side.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think like contributing to open source projects is like one of the coolest suggestions that you can give anybody looking to get into development. I've given one of my younger brothers who's studying computer science now,
Yep.
and trying to explore career opportunities and find a direction to go.
Yep.
It's one of the suggestions that I've given him and other people like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even our company, like they looked at my GitHub, right? Like everywhere I applied, they're not even looking at my resume. And like they ask if I have a college degree. Sometimes I lie, sometimes I don't. But now I'm like kind of pretty honest about it. I'm just like, yeah, I don't. But here's like my portfolio. Here's kind of what I've been doing. And the company that hired me right now for the contract gig, what they told me is they didn't even care about any of that. They just said, you demonstrated that you had the ability to code, and you have the willingness and ability to teach yourself if you need to learn anything new. And that's
great.
Right? Like I have to learn .NET right now because it's a big Microsoft based team.
Man.
Yeah. Oh, that's something I'm trying to resist as much as possible, but the job is the job, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah,
I've definitely been fighting that, but like I was able to pick it up within 2 weeks, and like I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I could probably, not that I could probably build some cool things with C# now. Not that
All right.
not that I ever want to. Ever. Oh, yeah. I had a bitter battle with like the IT team because I was trying to get them on the Node.js thing, because I could build the API in Node much faster than I took to learn .NET. It's just they shut down any open source possible project. Yeah. Our clients are like Ford and like a bunch of auto enterprise level, and they think WordPress and security doesn't have anything, so they're still wrapped up with the idea of it has to be Microsoft because Microsoft is so secure.
Of course,
right? Yeah, because open source, right? Like you can't trust that developer, even though WordPress is powering a good portion of the web. And security doesn't matter. Security is not the like programming language you use. The security is the quality of the code and the infrastructure.
Right. But I sometimes, like in my mind, I equate like WordPress's security to kind of like maybe a lot of my analogies are like this now because I just became a parent last summer, and now I have a little girl and get all kinds of parenting wisdom and stuff. And there's all this like, you want to expose your child to things because immunities are important. Yep. And, like you can't, be a total germaphobe because that could be to their detriment. Yeah. The more that we are exposed to things, the stronger our immune system can become.
Right.
And I think open source projects like could be considered analogous because they are like contributed to by a community and reviewed by an open community, and especially a project like WordPress is subjected to non-stop assaults, which are documented very well and like become very public. How they're solved and when they exist and what the consequences are. And proprietary software doesn't experience any of that. It's all closed, and if there are vulnerabilities, we just don't know about them. And it's not being bombarded by constant assaults in the same way that a huge platform like WordPress is.
Right.
So WordPress is like hugely benefited from this immense market share, from the nonstop attacks that it's gotten, from contributions from every corner of the industry. So I consider it an extremely healthy project because of that.
Absolutely, and that's been the case that I try to make, because I lost a mobile app project because they wanted me to use some closed source serverless like from Amazon or Google, and I was like, I get what they provide, but at the same time, like when the developer told me to use this, I had asked them like why, what benefit does it provide me that I can't already get with the current stack that I have. It's not that I'm resistant to learn something new, but if you can't explain to me from a technical standpoint that like this is better because X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to use the stack that I'm most comfortable with, because again, the biggest other issue is developers will write it in a language that they're new to, like for example, C#. I don't trust me to write like a robust backend with it. I can write a simple API for like a to-do list or like a product or whatever the heck that we had to write it for. But even then, like I still don't feel comfortable saying like this is ready for production, because I don't know if I use best practices. I tried to learn the best practices, but that's something that comes from experience, right? So like for me, I can write something in JavaScript like a Node, like a Node API, much more secure and better and faster than I can in .NET. But I'm sure there are .NET developers can do the same, where they can write it in .NET and it might be more secure than what I could write in Node.js. Probably not, but it's just the comparative of it all. Like where like some people are so like hung up about like one language being better than the other, and really it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, they all compile to the same thing, and they just they work on the same. They should work on the same machine. So like
well, you're totally right, and time's flying by here. Only got a couple minutes more, and I want to respect your time and everything. So let's hit some wrap up questions here.
Sure.
Looking ahead at your calendar for the rest of 2018, where is somebody going to bump into you?
WordCamp Detroit, WordCamp US, and any other WordCamps that I should attend. I'm looking forward to just kind of jump right into it. And then I'm going to put a plug, because there's a hackathon I'm co-organizing this weekend called Fish Hackathon. It's with it's with an organization called HackerNest, and it's a nationwide hackathon with a bunch of cities that are all going to be hacking on the same challenge sets. So this one's in Detroit. It's at Wayne State this weekend. So that's my plug.
That's really cool. Wow. Have you done those before?
I've gone to a hackathon before, but I've never hosted one before. This is a learning experience.
That's pretty cool. What sort of like outreach are you doing, and who's coming?
A lot of the meetup communities that I've been around, I sent it to work. We're slowly getting sponsors and stuff like that. But like, there's an Amazon gift card, or not gift card, it's credit for AWS. Like it's a decent chunk and change for AWS, and some of the other prizes are pretty cool too.
Wow.
But we're looking to get the HackerNest partnered with the U.S. government, and so it's a bunch of government related problems. So like it's all about like sustainability and ecosystems and all that fun stuff that actually solves global scale problems.
Cool, man. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Can't wait to hear how that goes. Do you have any good suggestions for me for guests that I should have on this show in the future?
So that is still a tough one, because you have a lot of people on the show. I've seen quite a few. I guess a couple. I met him at the Ann Arbor WordCamp. Callan Mace of WebDev.
Callan, of course. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the first talks that like introduced me into like the whole JavaScript scene, because he did a talk on React, and at that time I was trying to figure out how to get React into WordPress, and that was a big struggle. And his blog post saved my life, basically.
Wow.
So I would suggest him. The other thing is, I would say I'd love to be on here in like 3-4 months to catch up and see where things have changed.
There you go. Yeah, those are both great suggestions. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that, Amit.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, anything else that you feel compelled to share, or just how might people follow you?
So I have a Twitter for the MobiDev. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the email, and I cannot remember that password. It hurts me. I have it for everything else. I have that username for everything else, but I know Twitter is the thing. Otherwise, it's my first name, last name, and the letter K, and that's like my username for GitHub, Twitter, my website. You have it.
Mm-hmm.
So
all right, great. Well, encourage everybody to follow you. If anybody's watching and has time, check out the hackathon that Amit's putting together this weekend, or any of those in the future. Is that something that's done semi-regularly?
Trying to. Yeah. This is the first one for Detroit right now, so okay. We'll see how this one goes. And then I'm active at the meetup community, so right. I'm sure we're trying to put another one together at a later point.
Well, don't forget to say hi at some meetups and WordCamps. There's going to be 4 in Michigan this year.
Which ones are they? There's Ann Arbor. There's going to be Detroit.
Grand Rapids, of course, and also Jackson.
How far is Jackson from Detroit?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
No, it's not. It's not
when is it this year?
That we got Detroit in April.
Okay.
No. Yes, April.
Yeah.
We got Grand Rapids in June, Jackson in August, and Ann Arbor in October. So every other month this summer we have a WordCamp.
Sweet. And then US in December.
So every other month.
Sweet.
Going. Yeah.
All right, I'll be there.
Fantastic. All right, Amit. It's been good.
Yep.
Thanks for watching.